So our tax money is given to them with 45Q.
Right.
So that's our tax money.
Right.
We're paying them to put this infrastructure in that is
Right.
not going to work. And then we're going to have to be responsible for, after 20 years, for, well, first of all, we're going to be vulnerable forever.
Yes. Yes.
And then responsible after 20 years for cleanup.
Yes, it's a lose situation for Louisiana.
Yeah. Thanks for joining the Good Neighbor podcast. Today is a wonderful day to be here, and let's talk a little bit about community resilience and about social responsibility. You know, this podcast is really a way of enlightening our community and encouraging everyone who's listening to share the information, to learn a little bit about the environment that we live in, about environmental justice in general, and how it affects us daily. So I'm happy that you joined us today. I'm Tish Taylor with Concerned Citizens of St. John. And today we have a wonderful guest. We're going to speak with, oh my God, a pioneer of environmental justice, Mr. Darryl Malek-Wiley of the Sierra Club. And I'm so happy to see you, Darryl.
I'm glad to be here, Tish.
Thank you so much. So tell me how you started working in environmental justice.
It's a long story. I started back in 1972. I was in college, and I saw a sign that said Sierra Club meeting, and the topic was interesting, so I went, and there were great people to talk with, and I went again, and then at the next meeting they said, we need somebody to do, and I forget what they wanted done. Mm-hmm. But I said, I'm a relatively intelligent person, I could do that. Downhill from there, became group chair, conservation chair, and been involved in Sierra Club leadership in North Carolina, Alabama, and then here in Louisiana.
Oh, wow.
And was involved in lots of different environmental issues through the years. When I came to Louisiana in '83, there were lots of environmental groups, but mainly focusing on Louisiana coastal land loss, which is a massive issue, massive problem. But nobody was really looking at the Mississippi River and pollution. Mm-hmm. So I drove up River Road, and I was shocked at these gigantic plants. You just sort of, and I started meeting folks and just talking about what was going on in their lives.
Wow, that's serious. And I know there's a lot to talk about.
There are lots to talk about, and I had met Pat Bryant, who you know,
yes.
In Mobile. And he was working with, had the Gulf Coast Tenant Organization, which was working with folks in housing projects up the river. And he had me go to Hanville, across the river, because they had just won a big settlement to get the housing project fixed up. But people were getting sick. And their kids had pink eye, and they had problems with breathing. And so he said, Darryl, you know this environmental stuff, so figure it out.
That's Pat Bryant.
That sounds like, yeah, And I said, okay, we're going to work on this together, and we started looking at it, and we figured out it was the then Union Carbide, now it's Dow chemical plant. And what we figured out, if you drove from the housing project, down River Road to the plant, it was about 5 miles. Mm-hmm. But if you looked at the map, because of the turn of the river, air miles was less than a half mile from where the plant was to where the people were breathing the pollution. And that sort of started my involvement in environmental justice. And then I got involved in Geismar later.
Ah, Geismar. So tell me a little bit about Geismar.
Yeah, so Geismar is where BASF is located, which is a gigantic German chemical plant. And they had a lockout. And what a lockout means is the company said to the workers, we don't need you anymore. And they locked the gate, and the company was unionized. So the workers were locked out, and they were trying to figure out how to get the company to come back to the bargaining table. Mm-hmm. So they reached out to me as an environmentalist. They talked with Amos Favorite, who was in Geismar, and helped establish the Ascension residents against pollution, and they would talk about how to focus on the pollution problems coming from the BASF plant. So in one union meeting, they brought out an aerial photograph of the plant and said, all right, guys, tell us where you buried stuff. And the guys went and put on the map, the guy told me to bury this here. And then they went to the state agency and said, we want enforcement. We know they buried it there.
Right.
We want you to go in. And so it was a really far-reaching campaign to really trying to make the company become accountable to the community and the people working in the plant. And in one of the strategy meetings where Richard Miller, myself, Mr. Favorite were at, and there might have been some adult beverages consumed. Might have been. And we were trying to think about how to frame what we were seeing. And in talking to Amos, he would talk about how many people he knew had cancer and how many people that he in his community. And so we came up with the term Cancer Alley.
Wow.
And we started putting out press releases from Cancer Alley, Louisiana. The union had a member that owned a billboard on I-10. So they put up a gigantic billboard, "Welcome to Cancer Alley, brought to you by BASF."
Wow.
And, so it was a very, complex, we were involved in all, we talked about how much pollution was coming out of the plant. And at the same time, we were doing all this, looking at the pollution. A friend of mine that was involved over in the city of Plaquemine, her friend had a miscarriage. And then a friend of hers had a miscarriage. And then they started tracking up how many women had miscarriages in St. Gabriel, which is just up the river from Geismar. And eventually it turned out that there were 60 women that had 70 miscarriages over about a year time period. And we thought that was a massive problem. And so we held press conferences. We never said pollution causes miscarriage. We said this is a fact and this is a fact. And it started, highlighting the problems with health and pollution. And this is back in 85, 86. And we didn't have the type of scientific knowledge we have now.
Right.
It was something in our gut that we felt. And so we involved in all sorts of stuff. I went to Germany with a delegation from Louisiana, went over to meet the Green Party in Germany and the workers at the BASF plant in Germany. Note to self, don't go to Germany in January.
It's winter.
It's winter. We left Louisiana, it was 60 degrees. We got to Belgium where the plane landed, it was -1, And we didn't, it was cold. So, but we did meet the folks and talk with them and built relationships between the workers in Germany and then the workers here in Louisiana. And it was sort of a whole campaign that evolved, that went on for years around trying to get the guys back in the plant. And it was all sorts of educational work we were doing.
Yeah.
We were educating communities about environmental justice, what it meant, what is the air pollution, because a lot of people assumed that the state agency or EPA took care of them.
Right.
And as you know,
They do.
They
do take care of them.
they do take care of the polluters, yes. It was a campaign that went on for a while and evolved in 88. We did the Great Louisiana Toxics March. Mm-hmm. And we called it the Great Louisiana Toxics March so that the media would have to say, when they reported about it, the Great Louisiana, and it was an idea that Greenpeace was coming down the Mississippi River in one of their boats testing water quality, and Pat Bryant and myself and a gentleman from Greenpeace, once again, those adult beverages are dangerous stuff. And we decided, well, if you're coming down the river, we'll come down the land. And, so we marched from Devil Swamp, which is north of Baton Rouge, to New Orleans, it took us 11 days, stopping in different parishes, stopping in different plants, talking about the pollution from the plants. And it was massive. It was, we had a core group of about 30 people that walked the whole distance. But every time we would come into a community and have night rallies, it would blossom to 200, 300 people.
Yeah.
And we were the #1 story in the newspapers in New Orleans and Baton Rouge. All the television channels followed where we were at. One day we were walking in, I think in St. James, and all of a sudden I saw a Channel 6 helicopter. They landed and started interviewing us.
Wow, so y'all was celebrities.
Yeah, and we have to remember this is '85, so the cell phones, there wasn't a cell phone.
Right.
We had a cell phone, but it was a block.
Yeah.
I mean, and it wasn't coverage. So, and so that sort of set the tone for the organizing that has happened since '88, with trying to educate communities up and down the river about pollution, about what's going on, and it's still a problem. It's still it's a very very complex pollution problem because we have so many different chemicals from so many different plants impacting the water, impacting the air, impacting the land, and nobody really understands what's going on with all that.
Yeah.
Nobody really does. And before I moved to Louisiana, back in '72, there was a newspaper story about an EPA scientist. That was just right after EPA had been formed. They sent a scientist to Baton Rouge to test the air, and he kept getting extremely high spikes of pollution on his device. And he said, well, something's going to be wrong with the device.
Sure.
So he rechecked it, and no, that was what he's finding, real high levels of all range of different chemicals in the air. And he said, well, if we want to understand how chemicals impact people, we need to keep really good health statistics. The state of Louisiana has never kept good health statistics. They don't want to know.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, that the state doesn't want to know.
Right, we know that.
So, and it's sort of evolved since then.
Okay. So at St. John Parish, everything started with the Formosa on the West Bank?
Yeah, the Formosa plant in Wallace, Mr. Green, Mr. Wilford Green, and Daniel Jackson. They were two residents in Wallace, and they heard about this Formosa plant, rayon plant that wanted to be built in Wallace. And the rayon plant would have taken up the whole plantation there at right downriver of the community of Wallace, the African American community of Wallace. And the idea was the rayon plant was going to take wood chips and then put them in acid, and they would get that rotten egg smell.
Yes.
And break it down and to make rayon. That was the product they wanted to make. So because of the way the river is there in Wallace, how it sort of juts out, the deep water was right in front of the community of Wallace. And Mr. Green's property went all the way to the Bator. So he owned the Bator.
Okay.
And Mr. Jackson's property went all the way, and a number of people, they owned the land on the river. And they wanted to put a dock on his land where the ships would unload, and then have a 12-story high thing and a conveyor belt go over top of the community of Wallace to the chemical plant.
Yeah.
And this thing would run, every day. So
24/7.
the community of Wallace said that didn't sound like a good idea.
No.
So they formed a group called RAP, River Area Planning Group. And I worked with them, Monique Harden, who now worked for Earth Justice for a while, and then Deep South Center for Environmental Justice. And so we started looking at, the permits that came out and things like that. And at that time in 1990, EPA still had the permitting authority for water in the state of Louisiana.
Okay.
Okay, now they've turned it over so the state is in charge. But we were able to convince them that the plant wanted to discharge 800 million gallons of wastewater a day in the Mississippi River. And we said, that's a major source. You need to do lots of studies on this. And we forced them to rethink their whole permitting process. And this is 1990, so environmental justice was starting to be talked about nationwide. And we were able to get EPA to require Formosa to do an environmental justice analysis because we knew it would fail because the community walls is right there and it would have been. So the company decided not to do it and they withdrew the permit. At the same time, you know, all sorts of things were going on in St. John. The parish president, Mr. Millett, cut a deal with the land agent to sell the land to Formosa, with him getting some money under the table, which he then went to federal prison for.
Right.
And you know, we in 1990 we did another toxics march from this time from New Orleans to Baton Rouge. On the day the Planning Commission in St. John was going to have the hearing about the rezoning of the property.
Right.
That was the day we were marching in St. John. And we started down the river at the housing projects just past DuPont and started there and started walking up on River Road. They wouldn't give us a permit. We applied. They wouldn't give us a permit. So we were walking, there were about 75 of us, walking single file on the side of the road, and they started arresting people. First they arrested Mr. Green because he was in front. Then they arrested Pat Bryant. Then they arrested me, and then you know going down the line, and people kept walking. And so I'm in the back of the sheriff's car, and some of the young African American men that were with us and walking with us, they decided the goal was to get to DuPont. That was the goal that day. We're going to go to DuPont and confront them about pollution. Didn't know about DINCA then.
Right.
So the young African American men took off running.
Yeah.
And they started running, and the police went crazy. They didn't know what. And I'm in the back of the police car, and all of a sudden he whips around and parks on the side of the road and trying to catch these guys.
Yeah.
I'm in the back car, and I see Channel 6 television coming by.
Yeah.
And I know the reporter. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he interviewed me in the back of the police car.
Oh, wow.
You know, and you know, they let us out of jail after a couple hours because the women that were marching with us were singing protest songs in jail and riling up the prisoners. That
You're causing too much trouble.
yeah,
Even
we were
inside.
troublemakers in jail. So they let us all go, and that night they voted, you know, agricultural to industrial, and that has caused problems to even up to 2025. You know, that whole thing is still a problem, not only in St. John, but all the parishes where they've taken these agricultural lands and then zoned them industrial.
Right on top of people.
Right on top of people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty heartbreaking to see that it continues today.
Yes, yes.
It continues today. Tell me about how you affected just the Formosa battle back then,
Right.
how it kind of caused an effect on other plants coming into reserve.
Yeah, at the same time we were fighting Formosa, there was another proposed plant in Mount Airy here on the East Bank in St. John. And because we were causing so much trouble in the press, talking about pollution, that company decided to not come.
Yeah.
Which was good. It was a phenol plant, which phenol is another poisonous type chemical that we didn't need in St. John.
Yeah.
And so we were able to, you know, even though we didn't organize specifically on that, you know, we stopped it because we were being such effective advocates for health and public safety.
They knew you were coming.
They knew we were coming, yeah. And, you know, at the same time, there were all sorts of stuff. There was stuff, you know, Shintech was going on up in St. James on the East Bank, and Mrs. Imelda West.
Yeah.
And, you know, others were raising cane there, and we had folks in Baton Rouge, raising cane. So it was, up and down the river. And, still today, we still have, so many different groups trying to educate people about pollution in Louisiana.
Yeah, and it's so important.
It is.
Because a lot of our communities have no idea. And I mean, and I don't even think we think twice all the time about the fact that so many people are sick, because we think it's just normal.
Yeah, it's hard to, educate people about those problems, and especially since we haven't had scientists really look in depth on the link between pollution and health impacts in Louisiana. They've had it in other places. They've done some recently, Dr. Terrell's study about how just because you live in Cancer Alley, if you're a woman, you're more likely to have a miscarriage or a low birth weight child.
Yes.
That's pretty hard-hitting information.
Yeah.
The study that just came out from Johns Hopkins University that talked about ethylene oxide and how the high levels of that were much higher than what the state thought, because their modern air monitoring for ethylene oxide was so poor.
Right.
So those health impacts are still impacting us, and people, way back before 1973, 74, when they were trying to get the Clean Water Act passed, Representative Lindy Boggs was in Congress. And she made a great, and at that time I think it was Environmental Defense Fund, did some water testing of the water in the Mississippi River in New Orleans, and drinking water. And they found over 75 different chemicals in the drinking water in New Orleans.
Yes.
And so she really went to bat in Congress and helped get the Clean Water Act passed.
Yeah.
And so Louisiana, because we're so impacted by all these petrochemical plants, have also been a leader in educating not only Louisiana but the world about Cancer Alley and the impact of pollution on health in Louisiana.
Yeah. Well, we're still doing it. And it's so great. I wondered, was there a time when everything kind of slowed down for you, since we just came on in 2016?
Right.
So we had no idea of what the Sierra Club and Pat Bryant, meeting him, and he's like, oh, we marched here. And I'm like, we had no idea what was going on in our own community.
Yeah, there was a time because Hurricane Katrina happened. And so for 10 years, I worked in the lower Ninth Ward and with the Vietnamese community out in New Orleans East on rebuilding and recovery. So I wasn't doing my stuff up and down Cancer Alley. There were still people doing stuff in Cancer Alley, but I was more focused on helping the lower Ninth Ward think about how to sustainably rebuild, think about building stronger, more resilient homes. And with the Vietnamese community in New Orleans East, they wanted to build a landfill for Hurricane Katrina waste less than a mile from their church. And we stopped that.
Yeah.
It was amazing working with Mary Queen of Vietnam priest. He would always say, we have the meeting at 10 a.m. and it ends at noon and we have to eat homemade Vietnamese food. Oh. It was tough.
So that's a different kind of thing.
And when the city gave them the permit, and we were planning a mass civil disobedience. A number of the Vietnamese people were ready to lie down in front of the trucks.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that stopped them.
Wow.
So, but it's heartbreaking that communities have to go to such length to stop these polluting corporations coming into their neighborhoods.
Right.
And that's not right. Our government should be the ones protecting us, but they're not protecting us as they should.
I agree. So you've had some wins.
We've had lots of wins. For most of plastic, the plant in Mount Airy, we've stopped the Wan plant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, up in St. James. Formosa said in 2016 they were going to be built by now.
Mm-hmm.
They're not built. They're not going to be built. We've had a number of wins over the years. We've had really, powerful groups. And the thing that's driven me in all these things is the people I meet in the community.
Yeah.
Just amazing people, amazing. When we were doing the Toxics March in '88, we spent, we would spend nights in churches. We stopped in Geismar, and the junior choir was practicing the night we were there. And that junior choir rocked the church.
Yeah.
It was just, things that you can't, experience, that deep culture and history of this river.
Right.
And impact on both blacks and whites, and it's part of our culture and history that we have to preserve from these companies coming in from China and Germany and Switzerland and, all these places that want to make us a sacrifice zone.
Absolutely. Keep us a sacrifice
Keep us
zone.
sacrifice zone, yeah.
Absolutely. I know when we marched, the 2 times that we marched, every night a church hosted us.
Right.
And they fed us. But we did this solemn thing every time, and that was we lit a candle.
Right, for the cancers.
For everyone who had passed, and everyone would say names of people that had passed from cancer. And it was like continuous because you have more than one name.
Right.
So it's like it just went on and on and on all around in a circle. And I just felt that was so profound. And the thing about it more than anything was that it just make you feel like I have to do this.
Right, right.
I have to do this.
Yeah.
Because every time somebody else joined that circle, it was new names that we heard from that community. And it's just overwhelming, the list. And so because we have an issue with saying, because I will say it in a minute, we're dying here, we're dying
right.
here. And that's not everybody.
Right.
And we understand it's not everybody, but it's a lot.
It is.
It's a lot of us. And calling their name and looking at someone next to you and they're calling 5 or 6 names and so on and so forth, it's just unreal the way you feel about making this movement go farther and better and going in with so much more energy.
Yes.
And so that was so important. So I know that getting that nurturing
Yep.
and the food.
Yeah.
Different food.
If it's Louisiana.
If it's
you gotta
Louisiana
have
food,
yeah.
you gotta eat. We gotta eat. And and so that's wonderful. How many times have you been in jail?
Just once in St. John.
That's because you were with Pat Bryant. You know that, right?
I know.
We have to get him on the show. We have to get him on the show. He's out on his boat.
And Pat has a long history of a civil rights organizer. And where I first met Pat was in Mobile. And Michael was a young black man in Mobile that the KKK hung in 1981.
Good Lord.
And Pat was there. I was part of the progressive white movement trying to support the community, and so Pat was a reporter, and that's where I met him first time. And then I met him again when I moved to New Orleans. So, but
if there's an issue, he's there.
Yeah, and people keep asking me why I keep doing this, and it's not something that I woke up one day and said, well, I'm just going to do this. It just sort of grew, and the need was there, and it's a calling. Some people think of jobs. It ain't a job. It's not a job. It's something I got to do. And my wife keeps asking, when am I going to retire? I said, well, they're still giving me a paycheck.
Yeah. And there's still poison out there.
There's still poison out there. There's still people that need help. So
yeah.
I
ran away. I said, I can't do it. I don't want to hear the bad news.
Right,
I don't want to hear this.
Yeah,
it's hopeless. It's helpless. But then it's like, I know too much.
Yeah, I know.
I know too much to just sit at home and not do anything.
Yeah.
You know, and I love the idea that more and more people in the community, of the community, are being involved now.
Right.
When before you were coming in, it's funny how you know, people will say, "Oh, those outsiders come in and get the community riled up." Well, you come in with information, with facts. Tell us about it, but the outsiders are the petrochemical industries that are coming in. They're outsiders.
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, Marathon was created, you know, on East 19th Street or something like that.
Yeah,
Evonik wasn't, you know.
no.
So it's like, okay, so the outside petrochemical industries, they can come in and emit these toxins, but anyone who's coming to help us and enlighten us and help us to be more resilient and fight for our right to breathe clean air, water, and have clean air, water, and soil, well, you're troublemakers.
Yeah, I know. Right now we're seeing that with the carbon capture and sequestration fight. You know, I'm working with some of the communities out in southwestern Louisiana, very conservative, very rural, and the politicians saying those outside liberal activists.
Yeah, oh
you know,
yeah,
no,
tree
it's not
huggers.
it's not us. Those conservative Republicans are more radical than I am on some of that stuff.
Yes, yes.
So because it's their land, they're talking about these pipelines are going to go underneath their land. They're going to poison underneath their land. You know, that's not right. That's not what America's about. You know.
Yeah.
So, and here the pipeline that wants to go through St. John. You know, the possibility of accidents impacting St. John, the Baptist parish, is just, you know.
Understanding the ammonia plant.
Right.
I'd like you to talk about how that affects the community in general, because that's in Geismar, correct? Where Air Products is putting the ammonia
No, it's
plant?
right by the Sunshine Bridge.
Okay.
So it's across the river from Lumenville. I don't know what the community is called right there.
All right. Okay. But we know that it's it's St. John. I mean
St. James.
It's Ascension.
It's on the parish line, you know,
Of
between Ascension and St.
James.
James.
St. James.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the company called Air Products. And what they want to do is build what they call a blue energy complex.
I love how they make
Oh,
put
I
a
mean,
color
the
on
names,
it that
yeah.
makes it so
blue,
much
it's,
better.
you know, blue, green.
Yeah.
You know, there's about, you know, I once saw a list about 6 different ways they can talk about the bad stuff. And none of it says it makes it sound bad. So what it is, they want to take natural gas from, and then they're going to react it and get hydrogen and ammonia, and then, quote, they're going to capture the carbon, which it's never happened. And then they want to put it in a pipeline from the border of St. John, Ascension and St. James, run it all the way through St. John into Lake Maupaw.
Yeah, through our Maupaw Swamp.
And through Maupaw Swamp and inject it underneath the lake.
Yeah.
I've never heard a crazier thing in my life.
No.
It just doesn't make sense. And the fact is, this whole carbon capture sequestration has never worked any place in the world to the way they say it is.
Right.
And it's all about the money. The oil and gas lobbyists in D.C. were able to put into a bill, what's called 45Q. It's a tax break. And so Air Products is talking about putting 5 million gallons of CO2 underneath Lake Maupaw each year.
That's all, just 5 million.
Just 5 million. For that 5 million, they will receive from the government $425 million each year for 20 years. It's close to $1 billion they're going to get for putting their waste under Louisiana.
Wow.
And Louisiana gets nothing out of it. You know, the ammonia that they're going to produce is going to be shipped someplace else.
Right.
So, you know, we're getting all the bad stuff and all the good stuff is going other places.
Right.
So it just is a bad deal for Louisiana from where they produce it and the accidents that can happen at the ammonia plant to the accidents that can happen with the CO2 pipeline going that close to Sorrento Elementary School to where it comes along St. John and could impact the Veterans Home and the airport, the little small business airport here in St. John. So it's just a bad deal all the way around. And at the hearing in Laplace, there were about 300 people there.
Yeah.
And the only 2 people that spoke in favor of it were Chamber of Commerce
Yeah.
types.
Yeah. Yeah. We know them well. They're the regulars.
Yeah, the
that
regulars,
show
yeah,
up.
to talk
So-
about, yeah.
So we see them coming.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and they're lobbyists to me. I just feel like.
Yeah, and you know, that's the other thing with carbon capture. Communities have been organizing, you know, all over Louisiana now and trying to get the Louisiana legislature to put in stronger bills. But Air Products 2023 is when the first time we fought up in the Capitol about this. They hired 50 lobbyists.
Wow.
You know, we figured that they spent $600,000.
Wow.
We don't have that, you know, environmental communities don't have that money, you know. So these companies, you know, it's a different scale. They're hoping to make $1 billion, you know.
Yeah.
So what's a little bit of
That's
change here, you know? And the thing, you know, they're giving $1,000 to a fire department, you know, $10,000 here, you know. It's chump change.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just
And for something that we know does
Right.
not work.
for something that does not work.
Does not work. So you're going to capture what you normally put in the air.
Right,
You're going to suck it in,
right. And
put it in a pipe.
pressurize it, make it really have to put it pressurize it and make it cold. So it's under 200 pounds per square inch of pressure, and it's below, I think it's I forget what the temperature is, but it's really cold.
Yeah.
And when they've done some demonstrations on pipelines leaking and have this gigantic cloud come out. The major accident we had with CO2 was the one in Yazoo County, Mississippi.
Yeah. Satorsha, huh?
To Starship, Mississippi, where the pipeline broke, and that pipeline was an 8-inch pipeline. The one they're talking about for this plant is a 24-inch pipeline, so 3 times bigger.
Wow.
And you know, so the possibility of accident is just significant.
Yeah. And much more of a
Much bigger, yeah.
cloud.
And the thing with CO2 accidents, you can't smell it, you can't see it, and it makes it so you can't breathe. If you're
Right.
driving and your car goes into a cloud, your car will stop,
Yeah.
and before you know it, you're dead in your car.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's unbelievable.
it is.
And you know what we talk about is the fact that the danger zone, the
Right,
zone where
right.
we would be affected, does run along north of Airline
Right,
Highway.
it does.
Which means it touches a little bit of the Mount Airy Garyville area,
Right.
south of Airline, but everyone that's actually the most vulnerable
Right.
could be affected, because we have not only the Veterans Home, we have a senior citizen
Right,
center
okay.
where the seniors go every day and participate, but we also have a nice park, Regala Park. So the children play basketball and baseball out there in the fields. So it's our elderly
Right.
and it's our youth that
Right.
are both at risk all the way down the line. And we don't understand, and we rarely have an opportunity to stop something new from coming.
Right, right,
Because normally it's here and we're just begging
Right.
for them to just be good neighbors
Right.
and not poison us. But now we have to stop things,
Right.
and we should have the power to do that. I was so proud to be a part of that meeting over at the church, you know, that community meeting
Right.
against it, to stand with people who we don't have to align politically.
right, right.
But we all know this is not good.
Yes.
And it's going to affect our well-being in the
Right.
future, especially since once they put this in for a certain amount of years, after that, they're not responsible anymore, right?
Yeah,
It's the state.
after I think it's 20 years.
Yeah.
Any kind of cleanup falls back on Louisiana taxpayers.
Yeah. So our tax money is given to them with 45Q.
Right.
So that's our tax money.
Right.
We're paying them to put this infrastructure in that is
Right.
not going to work. And then we're going to have to be responsible for, after 20 years, well, first of all, we're going to be vulnerable
Well,
forever.
Yes. Yes.
And then responsible after 20 years for cleanup.
Yes. It's a lose-lose-lose situation for Louisiana.
Yeah.
And the only winners are the corporations to try and do this. And Air Products, Exxon, you know,
It's unbelievable.
it is.
It's unbelievable. So when we come together as a community, I'm so proud that I know when I see Darryl, see, I put on my pretty flower shirt because that's just I love the flowers. So here I am with I love the earth, my hippie shirt. And I'm like standing next to the Darryl Malek-Wiley. Darryl is like our Santa Claus. He's the person who comes in with all the gifts of he's got the history, he's got the knowledge, and everywhere I can show up to support him, and wherever we go, he's going to show up as well. And that's the most important thing, that we are a community that care about what happens in our life.
Yes.
And so how do you define a good neighbor, Darryl?
A good neighbor is somebody that cleans up after themselves, doesn't cause problems to his neighbors,
Yes.
Doesn't overstay its welcome, and is just a good friend and is supportive of the community. Whereas these petrochemical companies, it's all take.
Yes.
They take, they're taking millions of dollars a year out of the community through tax breaks and through profits, and the money doesn't stay in Louisiana. It goes to shareholders all over the world.
Right.
So these companies are definitely not good neighbors.
No, they're not. Thank you so much. Anything else you want to tell us about, Darryl? Talk about?
No, I can't think of anything right now off the top of my head. I think we've sort of like the river. We've traveled a bunch of bends, and twists and turns. So the Mississippi
good.
River.
So we agree, no carbon capture. That's
No carbon
been the most
capture.
important thing right now, that
Yep.
we're all across state and across
Yeah.
political lines, everything, no carbon capture,
No carbon capture.
sequestration. And we just got to keep moving forward, and I appreciate you visiting as usual. I just thank you, and just come back anytime you want. We'll be happy to have you sit at the table. And
Glad to
let's
do it.
talk some more.
Anytime you need me, give me a call.
All right, I will. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Darryl.
much, Tish.
All right, and thank you again. Thank you for joining us today. I hope that you got a lot of good information and understand the importance of actually standing up and being socially responsible in your community. Stand with us. Let us all work for you. This is the Good Neighbor Podcast. I hope that you like and subscribe and share this. And hopefully you'll learn something that's worth sharing with the community and sharing with your friends and family. Come on out and join us sometimes. Thank you so much. I'm Tish Taylor, and this is the Good Neighbor Podcast.